Hello, everybody. This is a short presentation I want to bring to you guys just to touch bases with you about what's going on with the remainder of the semester. As you may know, we will be moving in the direction of being remote for the rest of the semester. So we have to make a couple of changes to our syllabus. Now, while this doesn't explain all of the changes that we'll be making this semester, I wanted to get this to you as soon as possible so that you will know what my expectations are on certain things. Two major things we need to talk about would be the final research proposal that you guys have to submit to me based upon your project submissions we've been doing over the course of the semester, and the presentation that's supposed to happen at the end of the semester. So the first thing I want to talk about is the final research proposal. So on April the 28th at 11:59 p.m., I would like for you all to submit to me your research paper proposal. Okay, so I have outlined these details very specifically in a document on Canvas. You probably can't see it here, but I kind of wanted to give you a visual of what it looks like so that you can know what to expect there. Now, I know we haven't completed our fourth project submission, but I will be getting that to you very, very soon, very, very shortly. But I wanted to go ahead and give you the research proposal paper expectations so that you can prepare accordingly. So if you have a chance to pull up the document, you'll see that it's outlined to where you have to give me a document that should be about 10 pages long, which isn't a lot because you're putting together a lot of the pieces we already talked about over the course of the semester. In this paper, you need to make sure that you have a title page, you have an abstract, an introduction, a literature review, the research design section, which is the bulk of the paper, a conclusion page, and a reference page. And I also leave you with a number of things to consider and to think about in doing this paper. It should be similar to, a research paper you have turned in a lot of classes, but we're just focusing on the details of research design. I list in each section a number of questions that need to be answered. These questions are not optional. These are things that need to be answered, but I still want your paper to be structured in a narrative, persuasive paper format. You are doing technical writing, that is for sure, but it still should be structured as a paper. And I say that because when you get a list of questions, sometimes students have a tendency to just write an answer to the question, answer all three questions, and that's all they put in that section, and then they say, oh, I'm done. No, this should still be written properly. Just make sure that you have the answers to the questions in those sections. Those questions don't have to be answered in order or anything, but they need to be thoroughly answered. And most questions take more than one sentence to answer and to fully explain. Remember, when we're doing research, we make sure that we explain, explain, explain. Don't assume, don't worry about using very colorful language. Just make sure that people have a full understanding of what it is that you're trying to do there. So the literature review section, that should come out of your annotated bibliography assignment. This is where you go through and you synthesize all of the information that you were able to find. You pull that string, you pull that thread, showing where those commonalities are, right? You have this whole umbrella that we talked about before, finding those commonalities and making those pieces talk together. Instead of doing the boxcar and just giving me list after list after list of what each author said, you're supposed to be using this section to summarize what the literature says about your topic. Where are the places where they agree? Where are the places where they disagree? What things have not been explored within the literature? What things need to be explored? What will your paper add to this discussion, the things that you're interested in studying? That's what you should have in that section. In the research design section, this is the meat of your paper where you tell me exactly how you plan on conducting this study. You're telling me about whether or not you plan on doing a quantitative study or a qualitative study. You tell me what are the quantitative techniques or qualitative techniques you're going to use to study here. What are your variables? How will you be operationalizing those variables? Okay. You're going to also be telling me about the level of measurement. You remember before we talked about nominal, ordinal, interval, and ratio. You need to tell me what those different levels of measurement are for your variables specifically. Tell me about the data. You need to tell me where you plan on getting this data, how you plan on getting access to that data, how that whole process is going to come about. I need to know about that stuff. Sampling. Are you going to be using a population? You're going to use like census data, or are you going to be using a sample? And if you're going to use a sample, how will you get access to that sample? And what sampling technique would you be using to go through and look at the data? You need to also tell me, if you're using quantitative methods, what statistical tests you're going to use to test your hypotheses. That's something that we're going to get into next week, talking about different tests and everything there, but those are things to consider. If you're using a qualitative method, you need to tell me how you're going to go about assessing your research expectations and the outcomes there. How will you be able to draw conclusions from there? What method or technique will you be using to draw conclusions? And finally, you need to have a page that is your conclusion section, okay? In this section, you are summarizing everything you told me in a nice little bubble. Talk about your expectations of what you expect to see here, and also tell me a bit about your limitations. What are some things that you are not going to be able to do within this study, but that need to be studied in the future? What are some concerns that you have with going down this path of studying? Are there any ethical implications that you may need to consider there? Those are all things you should consider, okay? And the final section should include your references, and you need to have a minimum of 5 scholarly references. This is non-negotiable, 5 scholarly references. We talked about what constitutes a scholarly source. If you have an issue, make sure you reach out to me and we can talk about whether or not one of your sources is scholarly. If you have more than 5, that's perfectly fine. Less than 5, then we have a problem. But make sure that you're outlining 5 scholarly sources on your reference page. And everything is in Chicago format, in text, and on the reference page. Make sure your parenthetical references are in Chicago format. So I'll leave it all off by giving you a couple of things that you need to remember. Cite properly, as I've said. Make sure you check your grammar and proofread your papers. I know a lot of you guys are home with your parents. I'm pretty sure they wouldn't mind looking through and making sure, hey, there are no glaring typos or anything like that. You didn't just leave words out of a sentence. Make sure you proofread. If you can't proofread yourself, get somebody else to proofread it for you. And then remember, this is a proposal. So you should be explaining to me why you want to conduct this study, how you're going to conduct this study, and why it's important to study these things. Make sure that you go through and answer all of those questions in a narrative form, and you should be a-okay with that. Now, that largely does not change because these were the expectations for your paper before all of this stuff happened in our nation concerning coronavirus. But there is a difference because at the end of the semester, you guys were supposed to do an in-class presentation for your proposal, but that's not possible. So instead, I want you guys to take a different route as far as doing the presentation. You will present to me via Canvas a 5 to 7 minute presentation about your topic. That means you need to develop a visual aid, which could be a PowerPoint presentation or using some similar slide format. But you don't have to get on camera and look at me and do all of that stuff. What I want you to do is to do a voiceover recording for this presentation and submit it to me on Canvas. So you'll go through kind of like what I'm doing now and talk through your presentation, explain to me what you're studying. I will give you guys a rubric for that very soon on what I expect in that presentation. And then you'll follow all of those components outlined, save that voice recording. If you don't know how to do it, I can talk you through it and tell you what to do there. Save it, and then you'll submit that to me as the meeting the requirements for the presentation portion of the assignment. So I want you guys to know that we have everything under control as far as this class. We're going to make it through this semester together. And as information unfolds or as changes come up that I need to make to the class or things that need to be adjusted so that we can get through the semester together, I will definitely be in touch with you. If you have any questions on anything that I've said, any concerns about moving through the semester, feel free to reach out to me. I am very accessible right now because I want to make sure that you guys have everything that you need to successfully finish this semester. And that is going to be all for me today. You guys stay safe, stay hydrated, wash your hands, and I look forward to speaking with you via email probably very soon. Y'all have a good one.